Hi, and welcome to AnimState. I'm Mike Jungbluth, lead animator at Volition, and we're doing a special GDC edition post-bootcamp wrap-up. There is a gaggle of animators in here. So we're going to go around... What? Would you prefer a murder?
I like that better.
Alright, there's a murder of animators. Starting to my left is...
Lana, Bachynski.
What's your name again?
Banana, Bachynski. Banana Bachynski from Blizzard Entertainment.
Oh, we're going on this way?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm Kristjan. I'm the animation director for Ubisoft Toronto. In my best voice.
I'm Tim Borrelli, and I am just flat out fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Hell yes!
I am Ryan Duffin. I'm a senior animator at DICE.
I'm Alex Lehmann. I work at Riot Games.
Billy Harper, animation lead at Sucker Punch.
Matt Derksen, I'm an animator at Electronic Arts.
Simon Unger, Phoenix Labs.
And I'm Dan Lowe, I'm a senior technical animator at Ubisoft Montreal.
And he blew our fucking mind.
Yeah.
And he's going to give us all those tools after this.
Yeah.
You won't leave the room.
So we're just gonna kind of BS about what we thought about the boot camp, what people's what talks are like, what things inspired them. There's a ton of us in this room, and short of one person, I think we're all speakers. Because Matt didn't want to talk or something, I guess. He's too good. And this is still maybe a third of the speakers we had this year.
There was a lot of
We had
speakers.
23 speakers.
Yeah.
That was nuts.
We did it. We broke the system.
We broke it good.
How many passes can we get in 1 year?
We hit the limit.
Is there a limit?
Yeah, so actually, the goal is I want to get, we want to get as many possible passes as we could get. And it was 23 people. It was going to be 24. And they were like, wait, how many do you have? And I was like, 24? And they're like, we usually cap it at 12. So
23 then.
yeah. So we had to do some finagling, but we got it, which was awesome. So I guess we just want to go around the room, kind of say the talks, or commit favorite talk. We're gonna go the other way because you already look confused.
Damn. Can we say favorite talk, but you can't repeat somebody else's answer?
Oh no.
Okay.
That's the end of the well, my 12th favorite talk.
It's I suppose I'll pick that one then.
Yeah. No, commit.
My name's Rod, and I like to party.
Yeah. I think all the talks this year were awesome, and the feedback I think from a lot of people was good. This was their favorite year yet. For a lot of different reasons. I think we had a good balance of the artistic side, the technical side, the high energy side. So it was all around just fantastic. But let's commit. Starting with Dan, what was the talk that sticks with you the most?
I really like David's talk, the first one of the day about Overwatch. I think when I kind of come from the technical side of it, I sort of occasionally forget about the character and personality because I'm so sort of in depth with just how do we get through coverage of animation, and it's a really good reminder seeing his stuff and the way that he kind of works about that is what it's all about, and just great quality stuff.
Yeah, that's a tough choice. Gwen's talk just stuck with me the most, just as being memorable, but...
What was your talk about, in case people didn't
just about how her theory that animators aren't crazy before they enter the industry, but they are crazy from listening to repetitive audio on loop for their entire careers, and it's a form of torture. And she proved it
those 2
brilliantly.
slides, those
Oh yeah, she tortured the entire crowd.
I mean, when she delivered that in the what's the name, the rehearsal, it was funny.
Yeah.
When she did it in front of the audience, and then had the volume cranked.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
But you knew it resonated so much because the moment she did it in rehearsal, everybody just stopped and started telling stories about, the one time I animated this one scene one time, and everybody in the room had a story that she. So
it explains totally well. And I've never thought of it. So I've never thought of that's why we're nuts.
Yeah,
that's basically tortured every day.
That was the thing that was when I saw her preview of it. You guys heard me say this 3 times now, but they haven't. That I was I don't agree with your hypothesis, and then the 32 seconds of is it? It's the best of it. Like, oh. Oh. Like, I was like, nah, maybe you're right.
Her delivery was as well just so deadpan. She should do stand-up. I was telling her last night. She should do stand-up.
I was saying my favorite part about it when she pitched the idea and I saw the outline, I was thinking like, oh, that'll be cute.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Like a sweet little moment. But I'd never heard her voice. I'd never spoken to her. Even in our interview, it's kind of tough because it's Google Hangouts and I have terrible internet connection, so it's a sort of a more stunted conversation. But the delivery of it was so on point that it was just
because she wasn't that way on the interview prior to GDC.
Oh.
She was
she
seemed but she just came out and just was like, I'm from Boston. And just you put Lowe on the stage like
that's not coming out of that. That's
her presence was awesome. It stuck with me. Like I said, it's like choosing your favorite kid, but that was my favorite.
I think my favorite talk was Dan's tool talk from Ubisoft. It's just all the stuff that we do day in and day out, just little minute things. There's just so much that can be automated.
Well,
how inefficient we actually are for what we do.
There was a row of us that worked or did work at EA Sports, so we've been doing mocap for decades.
Yeah.
And we all looked at each other and was like, how many fucking years of our life could that have just given us back? Like how the years of our
exactly.
life?
When I did that analysis, it's like, gosh, 80% of the tasks that we're doing, it's like, just go in the corner and cry.
How much of my life has been spent up cleaning up, turning 45 degrees left?
Yeah.
That drives me nuts. It drives me nuts. And
you made a button for it.
Yeah. But all the time you get back, you can actually work on making the performance better.
Yeah. Exactly.
Or playing around with something else that's cooler than that.
I've been using mocap for 16 years. If you take 80% of 16 years, I want that time back.
I think it's just. Oh, sorry.
It was just such a revelation of just we're so underserved with our tools department at EA for what we do in Maya and what we do in Motion Builder, and we just don't invest in those small things that can actually not small things, huge things that can make our lives easier.
It to me is like almost. I remember a friend with a startup was talking about like getting better hardware for his devs, and it's like, oh, why does that matter? It's like, oh, well, it matters in that like if it takes you 10 seconds to build the game instead of 5 seconds to build the game, you're twice as efficient. So we should buy better hard drives and stuff like that. And it's like the things people don't think about, or the same thing with like using hotkeys. It's like when I see somebody not use hotkeys and you're moving your mouse over to save, it's like that 2 seconds that took you instead of just hitting Control S, like that adds up over your day and it adds up over your month and over your year. And like the little things, it's like this shouldn't take time.
Yeah, it's like Henry Rollins said, like killing yourself with tiny knives, like 2 minutes of my life that you're just stealing away at the airport.
But I think the big thing too is it required somebody like you that's like got a technical understanding of how to approach it and solve it, but it's also been through the animation side process, and that's a hard thing to find somebody that has a foot well enough placed in both. Because if you're primarily on the tech art side, it's like support tools that people are asking for. And they might not even know that stuff is capable. So
and in fact, like Zach, who I work with, who's the programmer who does like a lot of the Python stuff, his degree is in animation, and he's self-taught programmer. But it's kind of that's the great thing. It's like meeting in the middle between the art, the programming stuff and the art stuff.
And trying to find somebody that's willing to program my Python for Motion Builder there's maybe 3 people on the planet because that's a horrible thing.
It was really good. It's like I really liked how you had worked all that out. Like you basically gone through, recorded yourself, doing your process, and you said you could apply that to anyone. You just find an animator that's willing to just say, they can either record 4 hours of your work for or whatever. And then you said you're like breaking it down, you could see like you do this, I can automate that, I can make your life so much easier. And basically broke it down into something that would be very easily understandable that someone could be able to script it.
Yeah.
I think that super smart because you could apply that to a lot of things.
Yeah, and when we were building this stuff, like a producer came to us and was like, wait, like 80% of stuff you can automate, like, how come nobody's done this before? And we're like, oh no. But we kind of guessed that it's like, when you're on a production, there's all of these things that have to be done, like we've got to build an exporter or something like that, and that's always like top priority. And so efficiency just gets kind of pushed right to the back. And really it's like, it only took us 2 months to really build all of this stuff. And the amount of time that this is going to save for everybody is like crazy. So it's just, you need to just hire more kind of technical people to just kind of build those things. instead of hiring like 5 more animators to do it.
And I'm with Kristjan on that. I think the method that you guys have is something you can apply to anything. So we do elaborate, beautiful splash art for our stuff, and then we make icons out of that, right? And that process, there's probably 80% of that is automatable. It's like check it in the game, send it to QA, make sure there's a ticket for it, that kind of stuff. Like, find the right, find the right part for the icon. That is, you can't automate that. But then hit the button and now it does it automatically. So we'll apply that for a lot of things now.
I used to make macros in Photoshop all the time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's effectively what it is.
Yeah, that's all it is. It's like Photoshop actually.
What I like about it is I have a personal rule where I did it when I was in Maya. I actually don't know how to do it in 3D Studio Max. But if I have hit a certain button, I find myself doing an action more than like say 3 times in 10 minutes. I make a button for it because I know that's going to save me that much time. But I've never thought about applying that on a broader scale. Like in Heroes, we have mount animations, and all the mount animations are very specifically you need the start, the stand, the ride, and then the stop. And they're the same frame ranges because the mounts themselves stay the same. They're all the same. You do the same animation every time for every single hero. And I've never thought about applying a thought like that. Like, how do you automate this thing you know you're going to have to do but feels like a tedious task to like that broader scale? Like, I've clicked that button so many times. I should make... Or I've done those emotions so many times. I should just make a button for it.
It's like the script equivalent of like a one of those made for TV things. Like you see an infomercial and you're like, oh, I didn't realize I needed like the veggie chopper. If I had that, my life would be so much simpler.
Slap chop.
Slap chop.
Shake weight.
Shake weights.
But just like what infomercials make life seem like that. Like, oh, isn't this thing like, oh, holding your cup is really difficult. What if you had a cup holder? Oh my god,
that's how your talk could have been better if you had shot an animator failing badly in black and white. Spilling spaghetti all over your face while they're doing it.
And it speaks a little bit to what Simon also said as one of his, speed tricks is like learn to code, right? And, like we had some tools at Sony ImageWorks that when I went to Riot, the first thing I did, I reprogrammed something that does the same. It's horrible, but until now we have no tool that replaces it, and so they put like a secret button. Like I'm the only one that still uses it, but they put a secret button on it. If I right click on one of the icons, I get my old tool, and it still does. I mean, it still works, right? Because I'm so used to using
mine's
that
not
one.
pretty at all.
No, it's hacky and it's mel script and not efficient, but it totally does the job.
It's kind of like the Rain World talk where they're just like the result is the thing. Like the pretty code is not the point of it.
Yeah.
Well, that was the thing. The point he made of. Because so often it's you've got a really good artist or a really good programmer, you're missing all these things that could be happening in the middle.
Yeah.
So try and figure out how to get yourself closer to the middle in some way. Yeah, it's that's you.
I think one of the parts that I tweeted out from your talk, that it's like if you're looking at it from like, oh, here's the animation perspective, here's the tech perspective, and then like you're missing every perspective in between where the best solution might actually be.
Well, it's interesting in hiring, we have one all-rounder that is like, he can do everything, and it's so hard to hire these people because they are really great at all of it, but not fantastic at one of them, right? And so, like, no matter which division is trying to hire them, they always have someone that's better. Like, they might have a better animator, they might have a better tech artist, they might have a better modeler. What they don't have is they have no one that can do all 3 of them. And then how do you get them in the company and say like, no, there's a great value in this person?
Well, that's exactly what we're doing. Like when we hire at Phoenix, we have this sort of slang that we call it. We call them T-shaped people, where they have deep knowledge in one thing, but they can cross a few sort of genres or disciplines. Sorry, better word. And everybody we have on has that sort of T-shape to them, where they have interests that kind of dovetail into other places.
Yeah, exactly. We're just doing the same thing. We're really pushing for T-shaped, and we're trying to give the artists the time to learn stuff when they're interested. Yeah. We got a young modeler who's starting to rig and really adds a lot of value because not every day he needs to model, but every day there's something else that he can work on.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of animators that I work with that are kind of like animators first. I imagine a lot of the bootcamp people like this. Animators first and games people kind of second, where it's kind of like, if I wasn't working in the games industry animating, I want to be animating in film or TV or something like that, where I sort of see myself as being like games first and animation second, and that means that I'm kind of interested in all of it. I'm interested in like how rendering works and all that kind of like, and how the design works and all that kind of stuff, but that all informs this kind of stuff. And I guess maybe if I was more of an animator focused thing, I'd be more thinking about maybe not like scripted things like yeah.
I mean, I think that's interesting. I mean, we've talked about this on like, I don't know if we talked about it on previous podcasts, but we talked about it in previous years of like, maybe you think of yourself as an animator first or a game dev first. It's like, I think especially like, I know a lot of people in this room are probably more game dev as we do.
Right.
Especially
we've had the conversation about like what makes a game animator so many times.
Right.
You know, it's like, and one of the things that we've been talking about is like, it's just how technical it started to get, and you have to have an understanding of it just so you can kind of go, okay, well, I can do this way, and the animation, like you animating, so you can be a great animator, but that is half the job. You've got to get it in the game. And whose talk was it? Was it your talk? I can't remember whether it was Alex's talk or whether it was Jay. Was it Alex's?
A few people, I think.
One of your speed tips was just get it in the game. So that's my Arnold Schwarzenegger impression. Sorry, but that's basically what it was. It's like you get it in the game, then you kind of go back, and then you go, okay, well now it's in the game. That's how I expected it to look. What can I do to make that better? And then keep going like that. It's like being a really good animator isn't enough.
Yeah, we were doing a bunch of R&D, and when we started out on R&D, we said in 3 days it has to be in the game. And I just recently talked to the art director and I said, like, I really like your approach about 3 days. He goes like, oh no, we're now down to 1 day. It has to be in the game in 1 day, otherwise we're not like moving on with it. We want to see something. We want to like see it in the context. And I was like, okay, we're like Leak is catching up on that. We're trying to get it in the game faster because we spend a little bit more time on the concept side. But I was like, okay, cool, we're tracking that.
Gone are the days now where you used to kind of do your animation, hand off to a programmer and say, okay, well, see you in 2 weeks. And then you go and animate something else, and then, it's like, that just kills, like, momentum, it kills creativity, and I always find the fun part of seeing it in the game, doing something with it, playing around with it, and then it just making it work.
It also slows down iteration. Like, if it takes days to get to see it back in game, you're not going to improve on the animation, because you know the next time you do a pass on it, it's going to take another 2 days, another 2 days.
I liked your quote. You had the quote about, it's better to find out how it sucks in an hour than have somebody tell you after 10 hours or whatever. I totally massacred.
Well, we had, the first game I worked on was with him, and it was external development at the time. So the software was being done in another country. And it would be a month before you saw your stuff in game. You'd send it away, and maybe it'd come back and be like, okay, well now you're not going to iterate. It's like, well, it's good enough because we're shipping. Like, I can't get it in time for it.
Yeah, it's so painful to get it done again. Like, I just won't bother.
Just hope it works.
And you have no clue what the software engineer did to it, how he butchered it under the hood and sped it up and cut it up. Like, why does it look like this? Why is it playing 20 degrees the wrong way?
I ended up working for a company in England, and their animation tech was like way behind everything else. And they used to, the way they used to get animation into the game, they would animate something, make it look good, then they would delete all of the basically the hit motion, attach that to a node, then export that node, then the code would put the movement back in, then you would kind of see something that looked ish like your animation, but it just wouldn't look anything. So the first thing I did when I got there was like, okay, right, we're fixing this. I don't care if it takes 3 months, because the amount of time you're going to get back. Because the animators, when I got there, they were just beaten down, and they just didn't want to iterate for that exact reason. They were just like, okay, it's just so painful. It takes like 20 minutes to like have your animation, then destroy it, then export it, then see it in the game. It's just like, why would you do that? So we changed it and it worked, and then we got that whole process down to like the 30 seconds, like boom, export, done, see it in the game, cool, okay, that works. And straight away they started to improve. Just because it just made, and it seems a simple thing, but no one had pushed it. And it just takes someone to go in and go, do you not see why this is not failing? Yeah. And then you fix that there, and as I said, it's like, get it in the game.
And you get used to shitty workflows. Like, you just kind of get accustomed to, well, this is just how it is, and you don't, it's almost, you get blinders on, you get stuck in that rut, and
You need them fresh eyes.
Fresh eyes.
Fresh eyes.
Fresh eyes.
This is a reference to Billy's talk.
Yes.
You want to summarize it real quick?
What my talk or what my favorite talk was?
Because
You can say your favorite song. You do
Yeah,
It's on-
my
it's-
favorite talk was my own. Why so serious? No, my favorite talk was actually Yoan and
You are.
And James.
did,
Yeah.
like
Rain
Rain World.
Yeah.
That was amazing. So because it reminded me, especially of what you guys were talking about, having somebody that goes broad. Like we have this guy Andrew Woods at Sucker Punch, and he's actually a designer, but he started out as an animator. Then he taught himself how to program, and so he's in the design department, but he touches like the animation state machines, like any of the programming side of that, and we see so much better results because he comes at it from like the different angle, and that was that and the creature design stuff that they talked about.
Yeah.
So the procedural animation was fantastic.
I love the tail. I just watched that thing go around with the tail for days.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was one of the times where it's like they would have a slide up, and it was looping, but I couldn't like look away from what all was happening like each time, and like picking out all the nuances and stuff that was just happening. It wasn't something that he animated. It was something that he made sure that it would behave the way that you would expect it to.
It was so, like, that's the thing, like, I think with procedural, the big thing you often get is, like, look at all these savings we got, look how much smarter the workflow is, and they have that, but they've also got appeal in there, right? Like, there is so much appeal to those designs, and, like, the way he's approaching, like, he said, like, merging the AI with, essentially, like, what the animation is doing, you get this, it's so amazing, like, when that weird bird vulture creature goes from, like, climbing to taking off, and you're just like, oh, it just feels so good, and looks, and you're just like, they've just got that whole package like locked down and wrapped up.
So to your point, it's like there's something that I always used to say that is kind of wrong, but I always felt like with procedural animation, you lost a lot of character, you lost a lot of style, but they had so much character and so much style in there with procedural animation. I was just like, maybe it's because it's fantasy and it's not real.
Well, they did touch on something that I think is important, but not a lot of games even think about. Like they said, if you can just give the audience enough, I'm paraphrasing, I can't remember exactly how I said, but if you give them enough evidence that there's something happening, they'll infer the personality and determinism and thought behind it. So like that daddy long leg things, like we all thought it's pulling itself up. He's like, no, I just turned gravity off when he's got more tentacles on. You're just like, oh my god, like when you look at it that way, you're like, oh yeah, I guess I see that happening. But before that, you're thinking it's climbing up and it's pulling itself up.
Well, like you said, and it's a little messy, but that messiness
makes it look more
brings
natural.
humanity. I
really like that they touched on like they have the creatures off screen, like they are still simulating and still doing things and interacting with each other. Like, and I wonder like if they did that on purpose, because like once you get to a screen and you're like interacting with them, if they've gone through some like enough behavior to actually feel like they all feel like they look like they belong there together. As opposed to it just like kind of plopping them all in and then just going to put it out.
Well, it's the animation principle. Like you don't want to kind of go into a screen and then they all spawn at the same point and then you kind of warm up and then they do the behavior.
Exactly.
Whereas you kind of go into, you want to enter the scene in the middle.
Yeah.
Right. So they're already doing something. Maybe they're kind of going at each other already. Then
we're still super guilty of that for cinematics now. It's like you cut to a camera and action instead of cutting in the middle of them doing something. It always feels like that. Okay, act.
But that was the other thing too, though. Is I think the third component there was him coming up with the creature designs themselves, and it was you could tell that it was actually informed by the way that his systems were working. And so like he could riff off of that, and I get so jealous when it's somebody that can have all that like in their head and like think all that stuff out and then actually make it. I think that's like why that one like stood out a lot for me. Yeah,
that's like the one-man pipeline, basically. It's like when you get like concept art from somebody who also animates, and you're like, oh, I don't know how that's gonna move. Oh, actually, you thought about that. Fucking awesome. All right.
Their art style is very freeing.
That talk was it reminded me a lot of David Rose's talk from a couple of years ago. It's the David Rose talk.
That's because he's been telling us for like the last 2 years, you need to get them there. You need to get them
I think even in his talk, he had the little, he had the slug cat in his talk, didn't he? And I remember watching that particular slide and just going, I love that. That's something. Alex.
For me, it was both Ubisoft talks. So Dan's, because I think, like for all the reasons we said already, you can apply it to anything. Even though I think what I really loved about it is that you did go through the exercise. Because if I ask anyone what's tedious about this process, they will immediately tell me, well, saving the file is tedious and these other things. But you found stuff. Like, I love the category which was called junk, where you said, like, here's 6 seconds of junk. You can't attest it to anything. It's just you were thinking, or you were, playing around.
Yeah,
with
it's
the
like
keyboard,
you do a task and then it's like, oh wait, no, I don't want to do that. I got to roll that back and
right.
Yeah, and that's all savings.
And those are all savings, right? So I love that because I think we can do that in a lot of things. Just record ourselves, go through it, and write down what it is. And then Kristjan's talk, and I actually talked a lot about it to other people, like other artists yesterday. And we don't do motion capture in at Riot, but I felt it was like this. The first time you showed motion capture to a classic 3D or 2D animator, there was a moment of like, oh shit. And the moment you showed your stuff yesterday, that was that moment for people that work in motion capture, because like there was a moment of fear in the room of like, am I losing my job right now, or what the future's gonna hold, right?
I had to be very, very conscious of that, because I'm aware it's interesting, because when I was going through doing these slides, I showed a version to Mike, and then he was just like, and I've been working with this for so long now, I completely forgot what I was worried about at the beginning, because I've just accepted it now.
Yeah.
And then Mike had highlighted, it was like, okay, this is terrifying.
Yeah.
And then it's like, you need to describe why it's terrifying, but you also need to describe, okay, this isn't the apocalypse, this isn't getting rid of people's jobs, it's about, it's to free us up to do cool shit.
But it was like you showed 100 photographers a video camera, and there's a moment of what's going to happen with that. And in reality, it will free people up. And there's right now there's top caveats. It just works for locomotion, that kind of stuff. But I thought this is pivotal in our industry, and we'll see where it goes.
I think as animators, like, we are all such chicken littles as an industry, because like CG came and everyone was like, it's the death of animation. No, it's just another form of animation. Mocap, it's the death of animation. And it's like, no, it's just another application. Like, every single time, it's always that. And every single time, it's just, no, we are evolving. We're finding new ways of communicating and creating. And, like, embrace that, because you have more tools in your toolbox now to create things.
Oh, you could argue that 3D, in many ways, was the death of 2D.
No, shitty fucking 2D movies was the death of 2D.
I was talking about this last night. Yeah, I was talking about this last night, saying how, like, when CG kind of came, and then everyone, like, stop motion kind of disappeared for a bit. I mean, there was Aardman still doing it, and there wasn't really many people doing it, but then Leica came along, started making kick-ass stop motion, and everyone was just like, okay, let's kind of go back down this route, and then it's become bigger again. And again, the same sort of thing kind of happened with like, there's so many CG movies out there, and then everyone just gone, cool, CG, and then what's the one made, like, it was like a Little Red Riding Hood.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Hoodwink.
And that was so shit.
Yes.
Sorry, but it was just like, and it killed me inside.
Yeah.
But it was like, that was a typical example of, okay, well, let's do CG for CG's sake.
Yeah, that's true.
But then everyone kind of realised, okay, no, I mean, obviously Pixar's been a big kind of component of this, they're saying how, no, it's about story. This is just a tool, this is just the medium to deliver that story. It's like,
But
I
the
would say,
big
it's like
studios-
animators. It's like, it's like they go, oh, I've only ever used Maya, I'm like, it doesn't matter. This is a tool.
Yes.
If you can animate,
Yeah.
I will teach you that stuff.
Yeah.
That is fine. That is just a tool. That is just a way for you to get your ideas on the screen.
Yeah.
So it's like, and this is the same thing.
Yeah, the thing I really liked about your talking about just the whole tech is that, like, a lot of games, and like as we go like system to system, like there's a lot of incremental improvements in systems like animation and AI and everything. And until, like, it was like you said, like there was motion capture. And that was a big, like, once it was accepted, improvement. And this is like just as big of a leap in improvement of that. Like, once it gets worked out to be able to do more and more, like just beyond locomotion, like the stuff that you were talking about from the questions and whatnot. And it's really exciting to see that, because it's like, even though you haven't gotten it in a game yet, like just the fact that you are working on it and willing to try something like this, kind of like far forward looking, is something that the industry needs, because a lot of the times we're like, well, we got like, you know, a different kind of additive blending working now, and everybody's like, god, additive blending is so amazing.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's just fucking additive blending, it just poses. This is like, you know, actually pushing all of that so much further.
And we're still only just scratching the surface of what motion capture is possible to do with. Like, we're still, there's so many people just using it at face value. Well, we just capture it and put it in. But, I mean, you guys at Riot could be using it and improving your productivity tenfold. But so many people are keyframe only still. Like, oh, it's just going to kill our animation. No, you can do, was it Jay showed lifting keys?
Yeah.
That's what we're doing.
We did that with NBA Jam.
That's
just
the
all
base.
key lifters.
We did that like on Saints Row. They did it on like one of the red factions. It was like they would take all this mocap and they would just like, we called it soft mocap. They would just like lift like every fourth key or something and turn it into a breakdown, and then just go and like do their in betweens on that, just because all they wanted was the pose and whatnot. And, like,
It's exactly how we did Assassins. It's exactly how we did all the combat in Assassins. It's like Jay's kind of method with not actually getting rid of the mocap, I thought was sort of like, fuck, that's so obvious. It's like, because on Assassins we used to just go through and just like nuke a bunch of keys.
Yeah, they still do that.
Yeah,
It's
it's like,
just
which
using
is still a
like
work, but you kind of feel like if you told them, hey, there's a better way, everyone would be like, oh, because like even Jay was saying how he took someone to show him there's a better way, and he was just like, that's so obvious.
Yeah, as soon as Brad showed like a handful of us a couple of years ago, it was just my mind just, oh my god, I've been doing this wrong the whole
so
time.
obvious.
Yeah, that was. I mean, we have like an entire pipeline called Copycat that is built from the principle of literally using mocap as 3D rotoscoping, and it's been something that took us a long time to build and everything. But the minute I saw the email that Jay had about that tip, we completely shifted the way that we're doing this stuff, because it's like, oh, now we just do it with animation layers without even having like some sort of like rig or like copycat system that's in place.
That's what you need. And Motion Builder does it so well. I'm doing a combination of that, time warp, and additional layers in override and additive, and you can get cartoon movement without ever touching the mocap underneath. You get all that detail, but you can have snappy timing, exaggerated jumps, all that stuff.
And you're not fussing with billions of keys.
And you can have a small animation team and do stylized stuff and tons of it.
It's a good analogy actually. You saying it's like rotoscope.
Yeah.
It's like, because it's like someone, I can't remember whose tip it was, but someone saying he was saying like rotoscoping. It's not a bad thing. It's not. It isn't. I mean, that's how you learn. I mean, I've used motion capture, and I say to animators, and I think I said it 2 years ago. It was like one of the best things that you can do with motion capture is you learn from it. Yeah. And how I've like to think I've become a better animator is because I've worked with so much mocap now. I understand body movement because I see it all the time.
Yeah, and if you think about some of the most like the most famous classic artists, they were apprentices with a master, and the master said, for the next 10 years you're going to copy what I do. Literally, he said, like, here's an image that I like, for the next 10 years you make copies of my images. Yeah. It was very boring, right? And then after 10 years of copycatting whoever, Da Vinci became Da Vinci, and all of a sudden did his own stuff. And was good enough for that. Or Disney apprenticeship was just like, well, here's like the keyframe animator, and you're the in-betweener. And it's just like by repetition and mileage and doing it over and over again, all of a sudden you go like, oh, I get the hang of this. Yeah. And so just freeing up students to go like, no, rotoscope's not bad. It's a tool. It's I wouldn't rotoscope something, put it on my reel, and say like, that's it. I'm done. Look at me, I'm a great animator, because there's still stylized animation. There's so much more that you can actually delve into. But yeah, there's an art to good rotoscoping too, and you will learn so much.
That's something I've been meaning to do. I can't remember who I was talking to about it recently, but even doing that, just copying your favorite animated scene from a Pixar movie or something, try to redo that just to get through the thought process of like, oh, they did that with the pupils as he was turning his head, like those little nuances. That'd be a fun exercise to do.
Yeah, and so they did that for Epic Mickey. They took some 1960s animations and they keyframed pose by pose through it. They wanted to see if it translates into engine. They said actually it was really, really cool to learn how they thought about their animations, and then we applied that style to the rest of the animations.
Synchronized.
but it's like look at Disney, the old Disney films and everything, and then was it Snow White and everything, and then they were rotoscoping that. And I remember that they cut. There's a scene I saw where they took something from Snow White, and then it was kind of dressed up in something else, and then it ended up in another film.
Oh yeah.
Which that's
Disney shortcuts.
Yeah.
When people get mad, like, you used a base mesh for your ZBrush thing. It's like, well, does it look cool? Yeah. I didn't create the sphere from scratch. Like,
that's the thing. That would be like a speed tip, right? Like, use somebody else's animation if it's going to get your thing done quicker. Like, if they created it for the game, it is part of the game. Like, ask them. Don't be like, hey, you might just take it. But like,
definitely ask them. Don't pass it off.
but like, but the reality is like, if you look at them and you go, hey, I like the jump lane. I can make a couple quick adjustments for this character. Is that cool? Do it. Or like, you animated something on a previous project and you're like, I still have access to that.
Yeah.
You can use it.
Yeah, you know, that's why feature film has these elaborate pose libraries and clip libraries, and it's something you start off with. It's not you're not going to use it verbatim. You just like, okay, I want to run cycle here, and then you just clip it together, and then you bake it into world space, and then you go from there, and you make changes to it. But there's a lot of mileage you have to go through. You have to animate 1632 feet a week with like 3 to 4 characters, and that's the only way you can do it. It's just
we have an animation bank at Ubisoft. It's like every game, once it's shipped, it usually takes a while, and then there's usually a team of people that will process that data and then put it on this library for all the other studios. So you can get like all the Assassin stuff, you can get all the Far Cry stuff, you can get stuff from like years and years. You can get like I think it was like a Batman game we made I can't even remember, but there's some stuff there, and then all of it is basically fair game. As long as the game is shipped, you can kind of play around with it and use prototyping, do what you need to do with it.
We do the same exact thing. We have like this huge repository. It's called AnimRef, and it's all just FK mocap data.
Yeah.
And FK motion data actually. It's like there's lots of times that there'll be keyframe animation that we'll have, or something that we've gone through and like altered the mocap data. We push that back onto the FK skeleton, and then have like a huge library of nothing but Maya ASCII clips for tracks. And it's like really super cheap data. We just store it and keep it, and everybody can use it. I think we're going on like year 7 now of just all that data like stored. And it comes in super handy.
So we now got this thing like in Montreal, this room, the open stage as well for prototyping data. And it's like a camera-based mocap kind of system. And we just book it out like a meeting room. Anybody can go in there. You don't need to put markers on or anything. You just walk into the space and it'll do like volume-based capture on us. And it's not a huge volume. You can't do run cycles in it. And it's the quality that you get out of it is like not as good as a Vicon system. But for prototyping, it's just like book that room out, go do it. You know?
What system is that?
So the camera system's called OpenStage, I think.
Okay.
Is it organic motion?
Yeah.
Was it organic motion?
It's organic motion.
Yeah. And they did have, I don't know if they still got it in Montreal, but they did have a room because they updated all the cameras for the main studio, and instead of just giving them back, they took some of them, put them in a room, and then they had a mini Vicon stage where you could actually do the high quality. They used to have that. I don't know whether it's still there.
I'm not sure if it's there anymore.
They used to have like a mini Vicon stage. You could go in and do idles and like things that didn't involve a huge amount of motion.
We've got a pretty basic setup. It's just a 16 camera multi-track thing, but it's dead easy. I just jump over, like, I got to shoot a few moves this morning, throw the suit on, record myself. I don't need anybody there to set it up.
Yeah, that's what we do.
Oh, it's brilliant. Yeah, I can have stuff in the game that afternoon.
You're lucky we don't have that idea.
Well, you guys need to book it months in advance.
Months in advance, and it's such a pain in the butt to organize our shit.
Ours paid for itself in the first month.
Oh yeah, I have a mocap studio 100 meters away from us.
Yeah.
And I can use it rarely.
Yeah, so that's why I got. Raven had a nice big space, and we had like dedicated mocap techs there that would like in 15 minutes you'd have your data after it was shot. That was great. And then Monolith had its own space and somebody dedicated to cleaning up and delivering it to you. And now Volition is like we don't have the space local, so we've got to go. And it's like we have it all planned in advance, but it's I was so spoiled I didn't even realize it.
They've come. Well, some of the systems come down a lot in price and the ease of setup.
Yeah.
I think it was delivered at $3 o'clock in the afternoon, a bunch of boxes. By 5 o'clock, we were shooting.
We're the same.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. I didn't believe it. Like when they told us that it was going to be like that, and that we could. Like we even end up after that ordering truss. And they're like, oh yeah, put up the trusses.
Whatever you need.
Yourself too.
More cameras, go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Cool.
easy. It's so easy.
I think to the layer thing you guys were talking about earlier, one of the I remember this. I have no idea if this is true, but I remember hearing this. It was before I was a convert to mocap. I was still like we were keyframing everything at Treyarch a long time ago on the Spider-Man games, and then we're talking about mocap, and somebody's like, "You know Insomniac mocaps, right?" And at the time, they were still doing Jack and Daxter games.
Yeah.
They made mocap for that, but they were doing exactly that. Like oh, I'm just gonna I'm gonna get the motion, and I'm gonna plus the shit out of it, but.
Because it's blocking and timing that takes, well, polish takes a lot of time, but for gameplay, establishing that need, the blocking, timing, staging, silhouettes, you can get to that point so fast with just lifting keys out of animation and, yeah.
I just remember for that was really surprising to me, just like, that's not even remotely close to realistic, but it's still totally useful.
Yeah.
Ryan, what was your favorite talk? What stuck with you?
They were all really good.
So that's a weak answer.
That's a PC
No,
answer.
I think, we've already talked, I'll try not to repeat everything everyone else has said. I think the answer is important in that, like, I had a talk with a friend of mine, we do these like game dev drink ups in LA. I was talking to a friend of mine last month about personal projects and stuff like that. And one of the things, he's doing like film stuff, he's like trying to get into directing. He's like, the lesson that I learned is that stop trying to do everything yourself. You need to like outsource your life. Anything that you don't need to do, and probably that you can, if you can hire somebody for less than your time is worth, who is better than you at this thing, then you should be outsourcing that. If you can hire there's like personal assistant online services. And
I've been really wanting to get one of those actually.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it too. But or like house cleaning or something. Like I always thought house cleaning or something rich people have, and then you find out it's actually not that expensive, and cleaning fucking sucks.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have a housekeeper now, and it's like not that expensive.
I miss the most about LA. Everybody like having a gardener just comes with the rent and the place you're living in, and now here it's like, God, I got to go take the garbage out. Like,
yeah,
it sounds like such a posh thing to say if you don't live in LA.
Everybody's
got gardeners.
We have a housekeeper that comes by every 2 weeks. It costs us $50.
Yeah.
But I haven't cleaned a toilet in God knows how. Like my weekends, I get to enjoy my weekends doing something actually interesting, and I would gladly pay $25 a week to keep my weekends completely free. To do interesting things.
So that's the thing, and it's like you were also talking about like the destructive, the way that mocap gets processed generally is pretty destructive.
Yeah.
And I think some animators see their job security as like, oh, I need to rebuild that.
Yeah.
The Doozer Fraggle joke is like, my job security is just somebody fucking wrecks my shit all the time. That's a terrible job. Your job is just doing the same thing over and over again, or doing like
definition of insanity.
Yeah, I'm going to keep my job, but like, do you want to keep your job if your job is just rebuilding stuff that you've ruined, rather than like, stop destroying that stuff and be doing the fun, creative shit that we got into this industry in the first
I
place?
wish that was one of my points. Now I wish I could have used a Doozer Fraggle clip in my talk. I love that analogy.
Some days you're the Doozer, some days you're the Fraggle.
It's so good.
But that's it. So to me, like that's like a life philosophy I've been thinking about a lot lately. Like, stop wasting time doing shit that is stupid, and if you can automate anything like that, and of anything that can be automated, clicking buttons and turning finite values and stuff like that. So that's super important, and it's just in general like a good way of thinking. So I think that was great, and to get people will be able to duplicate that tool.
Yeah.
But the idea to fucking make it is the genius part. So I would say that all the other talks are good too. But that one rang with me because of that. It's like stop wasting time doing stuff that sucks.
Damn wins.
All right, what's mine? So there are it's really hard to choose, but I think given my current circumstance, my favorite one is Billy's right now, because it talked a lot about how we're in this industry, we're making games, we're not fucking curing cancer, and we're here to have fun and have fun with each other, and I've been on teams where it's like you have micro pockets of people who enjoy each other, but then there's like this like, you know, East Side, West Side, you know, kind of like, you know, animation versus design, like engineers versus artists shit that, you know, you see, and people just like, they take their very small pocket of things very seriously, like when confronted from the outside, when confronted from another discipline. But like when they're all working together, they're having like a shit ton of fun, right? Like you'd think like that would just kind of spread out to everybody. Like, I'm having fun doing my shit. Are you having fun doing your shit? Yeah, let's fucking have fun doing our shit together.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen enough. So I think that one really resonated with me just because I'm leaving a team that I had a lot of fun with, but we made sure that we had fun with other disciplines. We made sure to go and like, you know, hang out with like the engineers and the designers and the concept artists and the other projects, you know, we're like, hey, what's up? Let's fucking just bullshit. Let's go get coffee for like 30 minutes. Who gives a shit if it's in the middle of the day? We're going to go and have fun and talk about something and get back to our desks and be just, you know, just as productive, if not more. And like just remembering why it is we do this. We're doing it to make games. We're doing it to make experiences for people. We're also doing it to make those experiences that work for ourselves.
I thought that was a good point that Mark made, was it's not your career's job to entertain you.
Yeah.
Or make you have accounts. Again, I'm screwing
It
up.
doesn't know you're living.
Yeah.
It kind of gives you a living, but it's like...
I love that mentality where you make it what it is, not...
Yeah, exactly.
Don't expect that from the job.
I would, that's actually, since we all just talked about your talk, Dan, a lot, I think that was another really good point, that like not every studio gets that. Like we all make games, we are all creative people who like to do fun things, and like get out of the fucking building and like hang out and get to know like that producer you think is a fucking asshole. Well, if you have a couple beers with him, you might be like, oh, actually this dude's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But you've just never interacted on a human level. He's the guy who tells you to work faster.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I think that's super, like getting to know your team as people and not, I don't know, being so uptight about stuff. I think is really
well, and it's interesting. Just there's been so many times that once you break down all that stuff and you find out why people get into making games, it's so diverse and interesting and inspiring. No matter what the position is. I mean, it's crazy you brought that up, but there was actually, coming from Naughty Dog and going into EA, it was more of a culture of like, we don't need producers. And I actually had a negative outlook on what producers meant for the entire like game dev process itself. And when I went to EA Tiburon, it was one of those things where our art director, Rick Sluter, made us all go to, I forget the name of the bar, it's like some bar that was out in the middle of nowhere, that when they were working on production for, post-production for Lilo and Stitch, they just hung out. And he's like, everybody on the team needs to go. And I ended up talking to like one of the producers, and like his story was amazing, like why he got into it, how he got into it, what it was that he did, and there was like this level of kind of like respect in the trenches and everything, because I was inspired about why he was doing it, not what it was that he did and what that meant from my day to day.
I think once you know your coworkers as people, you don't need to be like buddies with everybody. You don't need to like get drunk with everybody, but I think it helps. But like once you see your coworkers as a person and not a role, I think it's like when they're just somebody who's like a task provider or somebody that you interface with on a strictly professional level, like it's easy to be like, oh, that guy's a dick, or I don't like the way this person communicates or whatever. And then like most of the time when you actually get to know somebody a little bit, they're like, oh, actually you're all right. Like, and then it makes your work easier. Then the next time you ask them for something or they ask you for something, it's easier.
Yeah, that's why we like to hire gamers throughout the company. Actually, some of the best players we have are in finance, and I'm not kidding. It's like time and again when I stand on stage with like a couple of writers and people play against us, then I always go like, "Hey, and this is Andrew from finance. He is platinum level." And everyone's laughing and go like, "No, he's actually platinum level." And then because you have a common thing. These people went into the industry because they also like games. They just happen to become finance people or producers or whatever. And then you can talk on that level. And if that guy has an interest in maximizing profit on the product, and you have an interest in making it the coolest thing ever, right? Now you can talk about, well, let's make it a really, really cool game. And what it comes back down to is like, are we game developers first and then artists? Are we game developers first and then a finance person? Are we game developers first and then a producer? And if that is the common ground, then you'll have awesome time making games together, because then everyone just says like, hey, I'm a game developer. I happen to be good at finance or artistry or whatever it is, and the magic happens.
You're up, Kristjan.
I'm going to game the system completely, because the tricks of the trade was technically one tool. Even though everyone's
I was just starting to think.
So I was like, yeah. So I can talk about everything. But no, okay, right.
Kristjan just licked the door handle.
Great, no, all the talks I thought were really good. There was some really good micro talks as well. But the tricks of the trade thing, I think that's something that when that either becomes free or goes on the vault, it's the first thing I'm going to put in front of my animators, because there's things in there that I've been saying for years. There's like. It's like, and a lot of it's common sense, but you kind of forget when you've been in the industry for so long. It's like it's just things that you do, and then to actually kind of sit back and then think of, I'm trying to think of some of my favourite ones now. The arcs, I'm obsessed with arcs. I used to do all the time. I used to put a little red dot. I used to talk to Dan about it when we were in Bazaar. So I used to put a little red dot on something if it didn't have a way of doing it, and then I could see the line of the sword and everything, and then I basically make that look pretty, and that made it more readable. There was, what else was there? It's like one of my things personally. I don't even know whether it was said, but it's like the fresh eyes thing that was that in the trip? That's in the trip.
Yeah, that was
Yeah, that is something that I've always said. A way I would do that as well is kind of like I save the animation. If I go away, I come back the next day.
Yeah.
Because how many times have you? It's like I call them bad hair days. Like how many times have you had like where you're just animating something and then you try and it's just not working. You come in the morning, you do that job in like the first 5 minutes.
Yeah. But the other side of that, where you think like you leave that afternoon, you're like, that animation's sweet. You come in the morning, and what the fuck?
Yeah.
I have a lot more of those days.
Yeah, I have a lot of those. Like, I nailed it. What idiot did this?
Oh, and it was great too, because like afterwards, Max, and I'm completely spacing on his last name, but from Valve, like he came up and he said, what I do is I actually videotape the screen of my animation and watch it through like the lens of like a video camera. And he said it has like that same sort of effect for him. And I get to thinking about it, and I'm like, athletes do that all the time. That's why athletes will record what it is that they're doing, and it's like, I don't know why, but all of a sudden being separated from that viewport and looking through like just a different lens, literally, just helps.
I do things. I tend to. Another one I always used to do with my animators was I used to play things in slow motion, because you'd be looking at something, I don't know why that's not working, and then you just go through it, and then you'd realise that there'd be like a really weird glitch, and then but the things is when you put it in slow motion. It's a very easy thing to do. It's not breaking any of your animation. Then you scrub through it. It highlights. It's like a beacon. You just go, oh, it's there. That's the problem. And then another one that I said to you was the head, and where you put in the basically the root marker. Yeah, it's like, and if you're doing it from the feet, then it's gonna everything. And you're right. Everyone does go ahead, and that is something that we used to again do on Assassins all the time.
We were talking that a little bit when we did the tips, because Amy was talking about tracking arcs, and I was saying. And Alex does the same thing when we were talking about, but sometimes, because if you plot the joint, it plots from where the root is or the effector is, but a lot of times it's a leading edge of a thing, or the tip of the nose. So what I do is I'll parent a locator where that leading edge is and track that arc instead.
I just put it on top of the head, because if you did it with Max, it would look at the root, which was actually the neck. So you do it from there, and it wouldn't quite look right, so I used to put it on the top of the head.
Or sometimes I'll even go further, so you get that, it's almost like it amplifies whatever it is, because if it's something subtle, just move that locator above, and so if it's just like a 1 degree thing, but it's up there, it's moving like this, and you get that, it's like a seismic thing.
If you look at when you walk and everything, your head isn't moving around all over the place, it's just, it is staying relatively stable, and then your videos did highlight it. I think you cut one of your videos off.
I had to, it went too quick.
Well, it's like, but when we saw it in rehearsal, I was looking through it, and I think you let it play a couple of times, and then you do see, it's like the head is like, fixed.
Yeah.
And then everything kind of goes around the head.
Yeah.
And there was stuff like that, and it does ground the character, and it's like my old animation director used to say to me, it's like, he'd look at my animation, and then he'd see, and and then he'd be like, and he'd almost try and go, okay, well, he'd move things over with layers, and he'd try and get the head to always be on a straight line because it made things more readable. It's like there's so many, like with the sword, there was so many things moving. It was like, okay, we'll keep the head like just more central, and then that will make the whole move work. And it does. It makes it look like it's more human, more grounded, more realistic.
Especially in styles, if you've got really snappy attacks, like you've got to get kind of what you were showing. You've got one frame to get the sword out. If this stays stable like that, you can get a murder from here down. But if this is stable.
And on weapons, I oftentimes like to track arcs on subframes, and you go like, well, we only animate 30 frames a second, but the engine runs at whatever, 60, 120 or something, and your tangents might be off, and just by going into Maya and say like, hey, show me every 10th of a frame, you will get a really, really smooth curve, and all of a sudden you will see, oh, I have a wobble in my animation just by the rotation of the sword, even though the position is right, just the tangent of the sword was wrong. And you feel it in the game. That's why one of the tricks was put it in the game, because in the game you will immediately feel it. Where in Maya it plays it back at 30 frames a second. You go like, it looks beautiful, but in reality it doesn't look beautiful. That's why it comes back to like see what your engine does out of it, and then have the tools around yourself that help you to organize.
There's so many tips in there that it's like, as I said, it's like I would quite happily put that in front. It's like I think that should be something that. I don't know how many years you can do it, because there's surely, I mean, everyone probably has their own different things, and it's like, it's almost saying as well when we were at the rehearsal, like, you could feel like every animator was there going, oh, well, I have my top 3, and it's like, and then it's like any animator that's worked with me will tell you the things that I look for. It's like, I look for ankles, I look for knees, I look for joints, and it's like every animator that's worked with me knows that I do certain things. I mean, Dan will tell you. So it's like, it's.
Yeah, I remember you telling me about that. Tip on the end of the sword thing.
Just a tip.
Just a tip.
Yeah. Lana, what was it? Oh man!
What's my name?
Somebody Hey, somebody
How do you keep messing that up?
You have
I've gotten so far down that rabbit hole now.
You should just stick to Latina, because that's.
I know I can get Latina perfect every time.
My favorite talk for many reasons was definitely Jeet's micro talk. His micro talk was about cultivating a feeling of trust between technical artists and animators, but he went further on to discuss cultivating trust, sort of just interdepartmental trust. His talk was my favorite because he was a very, very busy man, and that was actually the first time I'd ever heard his talk. And we were planning the micro talks for however long before GDC, so it was a thrilling adventure to see him get up there and see what was going to go on. But also because for me, that is something that is so applicable to creating a beautiful game. I feel like for a long time, my department was like sectioned off in different places, like all the designers in the design pen, which makes sense. But they actually had walls up, so you could sort of walk around the office in this big donut. You can sort of meander through all the other open departments. And to go to the designers, you actually had to go like into the wall, and all their desks were really close together. And you didn't feel comfortable or able to. Nobody felt approachable whatsoever. And recently they changed that, and now we're sitting right in front of the designers, and there's no walls up. And even just that, the physical representation of the walls being down, the designers are more comfortable. We're having an incredible experience working more closely together, and earlier on in the process, where the designers are now actually listening to artist feedback about how we can use art to enhance their design, and they're changing their design slightly to be more effective or more how they want the feeling to fit the fantasy or the lore of the character based upon what the artists are suggesting. So his talk about cultivating that trust, that one really hit home for me.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Oh, go.
There you go.
Okay. There you go. I'm from Seattle. Passive aggressive. I can do this all day. No, it's that we actually
stop.
Wait,
going
no, you
anywhere.
Clockwise, people. Clockwise.
You fucking go. I'm the nice one.
And then bam. No, we actually at Sucker Punch we put the designers in a position in the studio that basically is right in the middle of traffic for everybody to like go to like the kitchen and everything like that. Like they probably hate it because we're going through all the time. But it's like an open floor plan where pretty much everybody in the studio kind of has to go through this section. So there's all the time like this just coincidental like communication about stuff, and they're a lot more approachable, which helps a lot.
I feel like that for a while there's an attitude of like design is sacred, and design is sacred because it's the root of the game. Artists and people are there to support the gameplay, to make sure that the game it feels fun and responsive.
But there's a certain point where I think animation is one of those first disciplines where the rubber sort of meets the road in communicating that design and actually getting something that you can experience in the game, and like getting us involved. Like it's helped a lot where we used to have all the in Volition, we had all the animators together in the room, and we ended up moving some of the animators out and putting them in a different room with the AI programmers and like the combat enemy combat guys, and then the combat movement designers and stuff came into the room with some of the animators, and now it's great because literally that stuff is going back and forth all the time happening, and oftentimes they say, hey, we should do this thing, and maybe the combat doesn't understand what's going on with movement because they've kind of got their own fiefdom, but because the animator is like, well, I worked on that character and I did both of those things, I understand how those things start to intermingle, and it actually helps because we kind of become this interconnected tissue sometimes between different designs that haven't been communicating as well. So.
Yeah, and I like to think that gameplay is king, and gameplay to me is the sum of all its parts. It's not game mechanics. Designers do game mechanics, and that is definitely a very important part. But if you don't have graphics to communicate it, or don't have sound that doesn't underline it, or you don't have the QA department that makes sure that is in the game and it works, nothing works. And so I don't think that any single department is more important. And again, it comes down to we're game developers, right? It's game mechanics is incredibly important, but so is it to communicate those nicely. And then then if you go one further, I think game experience is incredibly important. I always bring up that Blizzard's installers are some of the coolest installers on this planet. You install any game from Blizzard, and that's where the fun begins. It's almost like the install button has an animation, and you click it, and it has a rewarding sound, and you go man, my game experience starts when I install the game. And so yeah, to me, game mechanics is one part of many. And so, absolutely. I mean, ideally, people sit intermingle. We sit not by discipline. We sit completely cross-discipline. We have designers sit next to artists because whoever needs to work with whoever, they should sit next to each other.
I think we do that at Ubisoft as well. We have the cells, and it's going back. So we had this, and especially on Blacklist as well. We had the Trinity. We had an animation. We had an animator. We had a programmer. And we have a designer, and they'd all understand what each other did, But obviously, everyone was kind of their expert in their field. But it's design would understand what I was doing, programmer would understand what I was doing. I would get what they're doing, but not know how to do it. I would understand design, and then we'd all be together. So, and by having all of those intermingling and everything, it's we were even sat. It's I wasn't sat with the animators on Blacklist. I was they were all kind of around everywhere. We were all in close proximity. But the thing is I didn't necessarily need to be sat with the animators because it would actually make me go up and then go and speak to them. Because I'd have to go and speak to them and work with them and then review their animation anyway. But the person that I needed to be sat next to was the programmer and the designer, and so I would be sat next to them more than I would be sat next to other people. And that seemed to work really well for them.
Designers and engineers are people.
I think that's Alex makes a great point. It's design is not king, gameplay is king.
Gameplay is king.
But there's one quote about that I really like, and there's one similar one, but I can't even remember who said it. Somebody on Twitter probably. But it's the gameplay is not king. Gameplay is prime minister, and that it is the most important thing, but it's not necessarily it doesn't trump everything. It's if you have really good shooting mechanics in a game where it's why the fuck are there guns here? Then there aren't gameplay isn't necessarily it's trying to think of. So there was a game that I worked on a long time ago. It was well, it's probably okay to talk about. It was a Silent Hill game. And Silent Hill is like a fucking one-horse town, and sorry, I like the designers on this project, but this was a bad idea. So they wanted to they had this idea for like a 4-story parking garage QuickTime event, and everyone's like, Silent Hill's not the kind of town that has a 4-story parking garage. Gameplay is not king here. This takes you get there and it's like, this isn't Silent Hill. You've taken me out of Silent Hill because you want a 4-story parking garage. So things like that, it doesn't trump everything. It is a constitutional monarchy or a prime minister or whatever. It's like, there are things that can trump gameplay sometimes. And I think that's like a really unpopular opinion, but I think it's true.
Especially because you just said Prime Minister and Trump in the same.
Yeah. For Canada 2016.
That's Trump.
Trump.
Make gameplay great again.
But the other thing is, that kind of made me think of like the other side where I was like, oh, don't design by committee, and I think part of why that is so popular is that there isn't the opposite of that does not fit into a soundbite. I've been thinking about this for a few months of like, how do you describe like the equivalent of like the opposite of the design by committee story is like the Emperor's New Clothes or the making of Star Wars: The Phantom Menace. It's like, yeah, we have a fucking somebody's like lost their shit and nobody wants to tell them like, George, this is kind of shit. But it's like there's not.
Who's the main character?
Jar Jar.
Yeah.
He's just this.
If somebody has an idea for what to call, what is the opposite end of the spectrum of design by committee? Design by committee is not good. But what is the end of like okay, you've got one, like you've got Howard Hughes in his hotel room pissing in jars, and nobody else is like, God.
Lana touched on that in hers, where she said, "If you see something, say something."
Yeah.
At a previous studio I worked at, we had a sign on the wall that said, "If you see Swamp Thing, say Swamp Thing." And I didn't get it at first. It was, I mean, yeah, it makes sense, right? Because everybody else assumes the other person's going to catch it, and then nobody catches it. It's like that story about that lady being murdered out in front of an apartment building, and 100 people watched it because everybody assumed somebody else was calling the cops, and nobody did. It's that kind of thing.
I had a similar thing with that. I think I was talking to you about it yesterday. It's like there's a phrase that Ubisoft used called 3 Cs. I don't know whether anyone else used it.
Yeah.
You know, okay.
Yeah.
And then I remember when I was in a meeting once and I started to get to a point where I was getting relatively senior. And then all these analogies or all these like acronyms were being thrown around. And I was in this meeting and then just kept, everyone was like, oh yeah, so we're going to make the 3 Cs better, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And I'm like, just sat there going, okay, I'll work it out. And it's like one of those things, it's like, well, maybe I'll work out what that person's name is.
Yeah.
And then in the end, I was just like, I just got to the point in the meeting, I was like, well, okay, I'm going to say it. I just put my hand up and went, can someone tell what 3 Cs are? And then about like 5 other people went, yeah, what is 3 Cs? When no one knew what this one guy was talking about.
And then it was probably the sort of thing where like the guy that was talking about it was like,
I still don't know what the
it's
3 Cs are.
camera,
Yeah.
controls. And then
What's
it's
the stuff?
It's gotta be computers.
Computers.
He's going full Rick Perry on.
What are the 3 Cs?
It's camera, character, and controls. It's basically game feel.
Okay.
There you go, that's awesome.
Yeah.
You've got a guy from EA that didn't know this.
No
It's
problem.
but it proves that it's like, but it's one of these things that you hear it and then you don't know whether you should say something because the Emperor's New Clothes sort of theory of like, okay, well I'm going to look like an idiot, but then it's okay to, and this is like because I'm taking something back just very quickly, but it's like what I was saying is like I was between your talk and the Tricks of the Trade talk because there was stuff that you were saying from a new kind of perspective. I was just like, yeah, that's obvious. It just, but you don't think about it now. It's like the whole communication thing, like you see something, say it. It's like
The communication thing, to me, I find that, I'm going to pump you up a little bit here, but to me, I'm super, like, it took me a long time to learn that, and I'm still learning it. The whole, like, if you think you're communicating enough, you're not. That you figured that out so early in your career is, I gotta say, it's super impressive. It's really, it's super intimidating because I still struggle from that, and I actually say that in my head sometimes while I'm at work. I'm like, okay, I'm not communicating enough. Like, be Lana.
It's funny because this whole time I've been thinking about, like, just because you're new doesn't mean your opinion's not worthwhile, and yet this whole time I'm like, you don't know anything about anything. Just hush and let them talk.
Yeah.
Like, eventually it'll roll around to you, but when it comes to, just to roll back to, like, the committee idea.
Sorry, we got to pause for 1 second.
Yeah.
Bye, Billy!
Bye, Billy!
Great to see you.
Have a safe trip.
That's okay. When it comes to the whole committee idea, I think it's a matter of the communication, and people, when they hear design by committee, I think people think that means they shouldn't accept any other opinions.
Mhm.
Designing by committee, I understand that would be bad if you all have to say, okay, 5 of us have to agree on one idea. But if you design with advisors and you have other people submit ideas and you actually find the best one and what's best for the game, and you don't pump your own ego and say, only I will choose my ideas to create the final product. That's a level of, egotistical asshole that I also mentioned in my talk. That I think what people think is the opposite of design by committee is you do it alone or you do it in a group, and you can't do it in a group because that'll never get done, so you better just do it yourself. But really you have to make the executive decision and accept other opinions other than your own.
Ideas are cheap, and if they can't stand up to critique or feedback, then they're not worthy of being executed on, really.
Idea man is not a valid job. I'm sorry. I mean, it's not. It's, well, yeah, I think that was one of the things I really liked about David's talk, in that he was like, okay, we're going to start a new Overwatch character, and okay, we start putting concepts together, we start running it by people, just talk to random people. It's like, hey, is this cool? Is this cool? What do you think about this? And then if I'm like, hey guys, I want to make this thing that's and I explain it and it's fucking stupid, and I go to all of you and one of you is real nice, oh yeah, that's maybe okay, and everyone else is dude, that's fucking stupid. And it's well, it's my idea though. It's probably fucking stupid. So, I don't know.
Sorry. I was just going to say, we started doing this thing recently where we do feature team stand-ups. So we don't sit together, but for 5 to 10 minutes at 9:30 in the morning, we have the designer, the effects artist, the animator, programmer. We have some engineers who are working on whatever tech's happening around that particular asset, and we listen to what people are working on. And if we see something immediately, oh, that's going to be a problem right away, later down the line, we can catch it right away. And it's this awesome process where sometimes the designers say, well, this is what we're working on. If you have ideas, tell us now, because this is the time that we'll hear them. Because I also understand there's a time where there's a line. It's well, we already passed this. We can't really accept it.
Is that a new thing at Blizzard? Are you guys, that's just being done for the first time now?
There's been so many things in this conversation that I wanted to say, but I thought it would sound too kind of sad. We don't have referencing capabilities. We don't have layers, animation layers. We don't have a lot of really rudimentary things. So yes, this is the first time that we're doing that.
And
no comment, just asking.
But that's per team, right? Each team has a different pipeline.
Very different, yeah. So it's each team works very much as their own little game. I lost my vocabulary today due to being out much later than I anticipated the night before.
Do you remember your name?
No, apparently not.
Lana.
It's Lana, I think.
Well, like banana.
Like banana.
I think we're over an hour.
Yeah.
So I was gonna say along the lines of having ideas and having shitty ideas or good ideas or whatever, but and the whole idea man thing, the whole show don't tell thing. When you have an idea, if you have the ability to actually just show it, spend your extra time working on it. Here's this thing. I think the character could look really cool if we scaled his weapon up this much, or we changes his feet. Go and fuck with the model. Go and talk to your rigger and see if they can fuck with the rig a little bit for you. Just something on your machine that you can go and try and show and say this is my idea. Then you'll see it in yourself and realize if it's good enough or not. And this is a dumb idea, because I've had so many ideas where I'm just gonna fucking try it.
I did the exact thing 2 weeks ago where I was what if I did this trail on this axe? When I hit the ground split open. And then I did the trail, and I was it looks like a rhythmic gymnastic.
Yeah.
I'm looking at that idea.
I actually had the animators, I told them, every day, break the rig. I want to break the rig. And I'd start, doing these ridiculous, breakdown poses, these smear frames that were, I have a character, I gotta find the screenshot of it, where he's, a stocky guy, but I turn him into, just an N, a lowercase n, basically, for doing an overhand smash, right? Just on one frame, just because I was I really want to sell it from this angle. And I was alright, we're going to do it. And so I was really excited because I was going to, show them. I was this is what I mean about breaking the rig. And I get it in game, and I'm guys, come here and look at it. I didn't look at it at all first. I was guys, I'm going to show you what it looks like. It's going to be great. And they looked at it, and they're the fuck did you do?
You're the boss of us.
And I was And I'm just like looking at him. I was like, no. I did the thing where I was like, no, I think it looks great. This is what I want you to do.
You
I was so mad. And then one of them just looked at me and they were like, I'm not doing that.
And person you close is like, but our lead says we have to.
No, but it looks ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, no, they just looked at me. They're like, we're not doing that. It looks bad. And I was like, yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. Well done, you guys.
That's the best.
I was like,
Go back to your spreadsheets.
Was that yours, Lana? The whole somebody was talking about how like the good ideas will survive scrutiny.
That was Mark's.
Okay, Mark's. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. That I love that. That's like just put it out there. It's like if your idea is fucking good, then people will be like, oh, yeah, that's good. Like,
I think that's a problem a lot of big game companies are having right now is they think it's the idea that is the thing. They need the blockbuster, they need the thing, and they don't understand it's the team that will do it.
Yeah.
Any good team can make any IP awesome, but they just keep trying to find like we need to make the summer blockbuster. Like I can come up with 12 in an hour with a good group of people. Like game ideas are
The same thing with the tech. You know, the thing I've always been saying about the whole idea with Naughty Dog is they put it out there.
Yeah.
It's like they're not worried that you know how they do it.
Yeah.
Because they say it's the people that we have that do it. It's what are you going to do with this? And there's the same thing with Unreal as well. You know, as they put the tech out there and as I was talking to Jay last night, he was there saying how people will come in for interviews and they're doing cool stuff with their tech that they didn't know that they could do.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh shit, we should hire this guy.
That's like the biggest, like, for me, the mission statement of the bootcamp is, they're like, you look at film, everyone knows how to get a character moving convincingly on film, right? But what do you have to say? Like, what are you going to do with those characters when they get there? And for so long with games, everyone's struggling just to get them moving properly, and just the performance of how it works and feels that, like, we're not at a, like, we're still not able to just, like, I want to say this thing and do this thing as much as we should be. Because that's what I'm interested in. Like, I have no idea, like, I don't care if, like, a place wants to, like, make this tech secret and hidden and nobody can touch it. Because if it makes things better, I want to know who's going to say something cool with it. Like, that's at the point I'm at. I don't care, like, what the technique and process is. I just want to experience good things, you know? And it makes me so frustrated that, like, it's getting a lot better. Like, the fact that Ubi let you guys, like, show this stuff so early before, like, there's a shipped final thing that has this stuff is amazing. Like, I applaud Ubi on, like, so many levels because, like, so much of that stuff gets hidden behind things and it's destructive.
Yeah, come on, EA.
I'm sorry, I can't show.
Wait. Did anybody see that bus that just took that away? Like,
Well, comes around the corner.
I would love to peel back the curtain for some of the stuff we do, but
I think if EA did, David.
Yeah.
I honestly, because I know I was there for a while, and you hear a little bit of what's going on still, and it's what we think is out there that is cool. They are like a generation ahead of everybody, but nobody knows what's going on there, and it kills me because as an industry, if we all just shared more, we'd be at where Mike wants to be.
but that's the same thing, right? It's still it's like that hoarding of the idea.
Yeah.
Because they don't have enough faith that
That's
we've
what I
got
mean.
people that are going to do something with it that's amazing.
Yeah.
What your whole point was, Alex, was like if we share these points, it's not going to diminish our value. It's just going to make us like, okay, we're going to get this out there. We open the kimono, and now they're going to be challenged more, and we just build on that. We progress instead of like stay like Golem with the precious.
Yeah, I was yesterday talking with Jay, they came up with marking things up for blending, which is a really cool idea where things are different lengths, but you can still mark a football between them and blend the two, and it syncs them up. That's something we had at EA since like 2008, but I can't share that with anybody because our own proprietary thing called Sync Point Blend Space that we have, but it does exactly
it's in a word.
Pink point.
No offense, your implant will explode if you say that.
But I can say it now because it's out there in the wild, right? And Epic has it in Unreal, sort of thing. So you can't copyright it. It's out there.
What I really liked is that yesterday, so like Tricks of the Trade, Micro Talks or something, that some of the stuff that was talked about is stuff that everyone knows and you just have to hear it again. So like one of my aha moments was actually Ryan talking about and when like hey, you guys have to shoot reference before you work on anything, and I go, yeah, of course I shoot reference. He goes like, no, when was the last time you have really done it? For a moment, I go like, yeah, sure. I took a camera, I jumped off the thing, and then I recorded myself how I would shoot a bow, rather than actually delving for an hour into bow hunting, right? And really, really get the hang of it. And a lot of these things that we talked about is like, put it in the game. Everyone goes like, yeah, put it in the game. Well, are you doing it?
Right.
Like we had a lot of it. So half of the stuff that was talked about is everyone knows it, and you just once a year you have to come together and hear it again and go like, yeah, right. That's probably what we should be doing.
Everyone else hears the same thing. I think I was saying to Matt last night. It's really nice when you hear like EA have got the same problems that Ubisoft had and Blizzard had, and it's nice to know that we're not behind the curve, we're not idiots. It's like we're having the same problems. So this is why, to Mike's point, it's like we all get together and we go, oh, you're having the same problems. Let's talk. Let's get past this. How do you deal with this? And it's like, and that was what I love so much about the Tricks of the Trade thing is it was stuff that I should know or I do know, but I don't realize I know, and then it highlights it and you go, yeah, you're right. Because I think it was like Ron was like the majority of times is like I used to say to my animators, I managed to make one of my animators better in like 2 seconds. I went over to his desk and then just basically opened up his browser, closed down his YouTube and said, right, okay, you're going to be a lot better now. And it was just like, and he just kind of looked at me and he was just like, he was a little embarrassed. I was just like, there's no way you can be focusing on watching like some, he was just watching
My Little Pony unboxing.
It was something, but it was nothing to do with what he was animating. There's no way you can be watching this and then focusing on making that animation awesome, because that's in your head. It's like, if you're not watching reference of what you're doing, then why have you got this video? There's a guy I know who used to watch film. There's an animator I know who used to watch films of stuff that was nothing to do with what he was doing, because he just wanted to watch it. It would be like the latest film that he downloaded off a torrent. And then I was just like, listen, you're not going to be able to do anything. It's not going to...
We've had animators do, like, watch Netflix while they're trying to work.
It's like,
I don't know when I'm doing the shit that you automated, Dan. Because, like, you're totally in that space of, like, I'm just sort of going through these motions, and it's like this kind of white noise that's just kind of there.
I don't know how animators can do that because I'm such a visual person. If something's wiggling over here, I'm just like, I'm a deer in the headlights. So
I just My Little Pony while you animate.
I wish we could record Lana right now. Lana's dying.
Oh my gosh.
He had that waiting in the chamber. That was like...
You have YouTube open watching like My Little Pony unboxing. It's like so bad.
In the chamber.
It's almost the last thing he was watching.
Don't go through my YouTube search.
Sorry.
Alright, so I'm going to try to wrap it up because we're going to try to keep it an hour. We're probably an hour and a half, right?
But I want to say one more thing.
Okay.
I was just on my phone.
Yeah.
But about ideas, there's two kinds of ideas. There's like we were talking about with dance talk. There's the idea of like we can save time by like, oh, I've got this idea to like clean something up, and then there's the
Just Lana's dying.
But the reason I was on my phone, I was trying to find this Twitter account that was like, it's like bad film ideas, and it's just like it's got to be procedurally generated, but it's fucking hilarious, and they're all like, oh yeah, that you could totally make a good movie out of that, and it's just like idea after idea.
There's a website, game idea generator.
Yeah, similar kind of thing.
Yeah, you can do that. Just click the button over and over, and it's like RPG Space Pigs. I mean, I just barf these out for an hour. So you guys were just like, oh, fucking play that game. I just made that up.
It's like an Alan Parker sketch where he's pitching. It's like, I don't know if anyone's ever seen Alan Parker, but there's this whole sketch where he's pitching like TV ideas because he wants to keep his job, and he starts like, he's got this executive there. I can't even remember what they are now, but he just starts going, how about monkey tennis? It's like Chaz and Dave go across the world and play piano, and it's just it's all these weird things.
And people have this idea that there's a Jay Peterman in every game company that's like, take dictation today. It's not that way.
Alright, so I'm not going to say I had a favorite talk, but I think my favorite moment was so we had the UFC talk, and it was right after David's already cited amazing Overwatch talk, and obviously we had Jeff up there as an engineer, and then we had Jeremy as lead, and it was probably the most technical talk potentially that we had. Yours as well, man, but it was definitely a lot more technical, and when you go purely from like this super character traditionally animated thing to that, it's a bit of a breakneck change of pace, right? And at the end of the talk, the whole point of it was that they wanted a more responsive grappling system, right? And up to this point, anytime somebody that's tackled grappling in a UFC or an MMA game has essentially just been like, I don't know how to make that a real-time responsive thing, so it's just a turn-based event. And that doesn't feel good. And they said, we want to figure out how to make that feel responsive for both of the people grappling. And they show, they break down, like, this is the amount of assets we had for UFC 1, and then we want, like, 500 times the amount to actually get what this would be. And you see that slide, and you're just like, I would curl up into a ball and die, because how do you even come close to approaching that? And it was just hard work. It was focus, and it was a lot of not, like, back of the box sexy stuff, or things that like somebody sees it and goes, oh, I love that smear frame, right? I mean, it was like down, dirty, in the mud stuff. And at the end of it, he goes, when you step back and you go, yeah, the individual pieces of it weren't sexy, but we believed in this system, and I believed in the bigger picture of this thing, and I knew that what we were doing was for the greater good. And at the end of it, I knew that was what was going to be the beautiful thing, not the info. And I fucking love that, right?
Jeremy's metaphor was perfect.
Yeah.
The monk making the little chalk thing, just scraping little things, but at the end there's this tapestry. And that was great.
And that's amazing. Like, to just that they're people look at something that you think is unsolvable,
They
right?
believe that,
and they
really want to work on it.
And they get in there and they're like, they've got the passion for it. They know what they can do, and they've just kind of got the guts to like go through with it. And that to me was like the inspiring thing. It's like,
I want
go for it.
Sorry, because everybody in the room was like, well, yeah, it's a shitload of animations, but we kind of know it because it was a room full of developers. I really want consumers to see that talk. Like, I hope it becomes free, because I think gamers who don't make games need to understand what actually goes into, like, especially a sports game, like thousands upon thousands of animations. I think people just assume, why does it look shitty? This bug where he floats through the fence. It's like, no, like.
Well, and what's great is I was talking to him about the, it just went live, and they're talking about reviews, and I was like, yeah, actually, I've seen, like, the reviews I've seen have called out that the grappling feels a lot better, and it's become a high point of the experience. And he's like, yeah, and like, nobody understands why. He's like, one reviewer is just like, they added a new UI to the grappling.
Yeah.
And that fixed it. And they were like, that UI couldn't exist without the system, because it was communicating what the system was, but forward-facing, all they see is the UI, so they don't understand that. And you kind of have to be okay with that. It's the same way, like, if you're writing tools or you're doing rigging, a lot of times they're like, nobody cares about what we do. And it's like, no, there are people that care. Like, we care. And, I know it doesn't necessarily have that forward-facing thing that people, that outside of the developers can understand, but, like...
And we've always said, like, and it's the saddest thing, but a good animation review is no mention of animation.
Yeah.
They didn't notice it.
So it's like, if it's bad, it'll highlight it.
Yeah.
And everyone just go, okay.
Yeah.
It's not just accept.
We always just scan the reviews, like, did they mention animation?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I just do research.
We're good.
No? Okay.
Yeah. Control F.
Yeah. The closest I came was, I think, there was like one, it was like, oh yeah, there's this animation I did where this guy got hit in the nuts, and I was just like, yeah! I was just like, but they said the word animation in the review, I was like, and in a good context, I was like, I'm happy.
Matt and I used to do baseball games together at EA for a long time, and people in reviews would be like, I love it when that guy did his signature sort of home run celebration, and we look at each other like, we didn't put that in.
No, people just infer it sometimes.
Yeah, that looks kind of like it. So, like, we were talking about the inferring things that aren't even there. Like, if you just give them breadcrumbs, they'll do the stories. We're storytellers.
Captured 10 generic ones, and it just happened to fit the dude who was at the plate at the time.
I had a review up on my Cube wall at the time, and it was just like, nobody captured that at all. And this guy it was his favorite thing in the game. He's like, I love it, Ken Griffey did this thing. It's like, dude, we haven't even... Ken Griffey's not even...
Wow, you just dated yourself, bro.
Sorry.
Ken Griffey. Wait, is it Ken Griffey Senior or Junior?
Yeah, senior. No.
We did have 6 for Griffey
Junior,
though.
Yeah, I know. It was the first one that came out.
I'd love to just get that out of my brain and have more useful things in it rather than remembering the signature animations in MVP 2004.
I think as well with like Jeff's talk, the fact that he does like UFC stuff himself.
Yeah.
That he's able to like take this really non-uniform motion and is able to like pass what's important about it and able to break that down into a system. Like I'd look at that and I'd be like, I have no idea what is going on here, but he's able to sort of look at what's important about it.
No, that connects exactly to the whole do it thing. So that's a good thing I think about the bootcamp is they all seem to kind of connect together.
And not for nothing, man. I tried pulling Jeff's head down. And the motherfucker is solid. He was like staying put.
If nobody follows him on Twitter, Jeff Hauer, he actually posts on his Twitter feed stop motion of him doing takedowns with the little characters on his desk.
And the best thing about that, I would have rather, like, if I'd known all the slides in advance, I would have used slides of him doing that because not only is like he's getting reference, he's the fucking engineer.
Yeah,
he's the animation
and he's doing stop motion animation while at work. It's awesome. Yeah,
I think the other really good take, like that particular slide that you were talking about, Mike. Like that's the slide. There are like the old school of, I mean, like your talk, which I thought was also great. Of like, hey, there's an old school mentality, and it's a dinosaur, and it's I mean, it's gonna work for some games, but seeing that one slide, it's like, okay, there are companies that are trying to brute force their way through some of the things that some of our companies are like, here's how we're going to IK this, here's how we're going to solve these things procedurally. When you look at this like wall of animation, it's like, if you're going to try and brute force your way through the solution to everything, you will lose. Like, you will lose. And it's like, you'll be able to get a lot done, but then it's like, oh, we need one more variation. Oh, fuck. Well, we've just doubled those 600 animations into 1,200 animations. Now what are you going to do? You know, add 6 months to your project to animate that, or I mean, and of course it depends on the project, but just like the approach of brute forcing complexity, you don't have to have you don't have to have UFC like animation complexity in your game. A lot don't, but just seeing that, it's like, okay, what's that?
Most don't. That's an intimidating game.
Pretty much none.
Yeah,
I would say
it's on another level.
Yeah. But just to see that, like, okay, here's what it actually means to have like every variation of every variation, and you could make a similar slide of like I'm walking really, which gets into Kristjan's talk and motion fields and stuff like that. Like what, like we need to stand to start walking 45. We need to stand up, start walking 90. You start doing that, and then like the stops and like stopping and turning and every combination of left stick and right stick, and suddenly you've got 600 animations on screen again. Like, you want to keyframe that? Good luck, dude. Yeah. 5 years.
All right, well, I think we're good.
Yeah, we're right at about 1 hour 30, which is pretty typical for a Animators podcast.
I want to say it was a good crowd this year.
Yeah.
And they were engaged. Like everybody, like I was worried that when I came, because I needed audience participation from my side. Everybody was a good sport. Like
it was good. I love this. All of it. And you guys, this is great.
You get emotional there.
I do, man. Like it's
I'm all for club.
This has grown far. I think this has grown far beyond what Tim and I would have initially thought. Right?
Yeah,
and it's like it has become a family now, and that is amazing. Right? And like I love the fact that Lana, hey, fucking nailed it.
Turn it off
now. Like. I think it kind of shows that family thing of like you started as a CA for the first boot camp and now you're presenting, right? And you're like this perfect example of somebody that's been engaged and like obviously you're incredibly self-reflective in what you presented, right? But like that has led to this point, and I think it's awesome.
He's like a proud father.
Just taking the credit for your success.
No. I'm saying you're awesome. Yeah, I'm glad that you've been able to attract people like you.
If there's one thing that anybody should take away from this year, is that I'm great.
And it's Lana.
And
If there's anything we should do,
there's. Were you done? I'm sorry.
That was the interesting part. But no, it's just like providing this opportunity for people like me and for however many people fit in that room. The first year that I read the words animation bootcamp and saw a whole day's worth of just animation centric things, my heart was warmed and I felt fulfilled just for the opportunity that you're providing for the people of this community and our industry, and it's wonderful. It's exciting to be a part of.
There was some other quote going around last week that was basically about like a talk. Most talks aren't something you actually change from. Like there are talks, like dance was a good example, But there's like talks that you're gonna take away your workflow, but most of the time you just take away like inspiration. Like you go to these talks and you see everything and you're like, the biggest thing that you get out of it is you. Sorry, we have someone.
Yeah, we got any people coming.
Who's at the
Hey,
door?
Lowe and Sean.
Still
We're actually
recording?
just wrapping up.
Shit, sorry.
No, it's good.
Ladies and gentlemen, Zach Lowry.
So glad to be here.
We got Bachynski and Dice Stockholm representing
That's right.
briefly because we're about to close this thing. But
That's right.
but the biggest thing is that you go home and you're gonna get back to work next week or tomorrow for some people. That's for you.
Yeah.
But you're gonna get back and you're fucking excited about like game animation is awesome, making video games is fucking awesome, and that's like the value of GDC. I'm sure we've all talked to companies that are like, nobody goes to GDC unless it's like to get poached or find a new job or something like that. But it's like the value is you come back and you're like,
Or to get laid off.
but if you make it about you, bro.
You're gonna get something by Friday. Don't you worry about that. Real quick before we shut it down, lightning round. Zach, favorite talk of bootcamp.
David's about Overwatch. It was super inspiring. Like to not get to work on stylized stuff and then see that. I'm just like, I need it in my life. So.
Sean, were you able to make the bootcamp session?
No.
So just pick
It
one
would have
up.
been my favorite, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
we're doing another one of these tomorrow with more booze involved. So you guys.
yeah, for sure. All right. Well, thanks for listening. And they're gonna record another one of these tomorrow. So we'll try and get these up right away.
Cool.
Which they don't care about because they're already listening to it, so they'll give a plug with themselves.
No, this isn't YouTube. I'm doing old school.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Spanish
You know what's weird is we don't have a tagline out. Have your animator spayed and neutered.
I'm weak as so you said.
All right, have your animator spayed and neutered.
That's a word.
That's so.